Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world we're living in. I must remember to turn that down, I always forget. Um, how are you today? If it is morning for you, of course it may be evening for you. Vicky Marie, in case anybody doesn't know, I'm based here in Spain, in Europe. It is morning here. It is 8:30 a.m. I'm on my second coffee of the day. And when I can, I try and do an early morning stream to just update you on some of the things going on in places where it is not morning, where it is evening, such as Australia, America, etc. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do a couple of updates on two cases that we're following. We're going to look at Nancy Guthrie case over there in Tucson. Not exactly developments happening there, but there's been some information coming out. Still no arrests, or at least to the time of making this video. Very quiet, isn't it? Evidentially, for what the police are letting slip or telling us about. It's all, not much coming out. So, of course, there are lots of things being made up as a consequence about that anyway. But the main thing that I'll be talking about as far as Nancy Guthrie case is concerned, that's something that is coming out, and probably as a result of not many developments in the case, is that the Sheriff Nanos, who people have been really thinking is, not very good at his job, it seems like the beginning of this case was completely messed up. That's how it feels. Anyway, so now people are starting to look at Sheriff Nanos and his credentials and his background and, what is his history in his job as a sheriff, or, how did it lead up to it? And people are finding discrepancies, and he's getting irritated about it because he doesn't like this scrutiny. Of course, Sheriff Nanos was elected only I think just last year, by a very narrow margin. People are saying that he fiddled the results somehow by his opponent, removing them from duty so they couldn't get the word out that they were standing against him. There's all these sort of rumours flying around. The truth, as always, is probably somewhere in the middle. It normally is, isn't it? But I think one thing that we are all united on is it doesn't appear that he's done very well in this case. We don't have much faith in him. He says gives conflicting information, etc. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. Nobody's really come out in support of him. I think that as well says something to me, because you'll always have different views. People will always be one person thinks someone's great, another person who doesn't. But we haven't heard from the people who think Sheriff Nanos is great, have we? It's all been criticism. So nobody's coming out and saying, no, hang on, he's really good and our complete faith is in him, etc. So we're going to look at that, but we're going to look at that in a moment. First of all, just want to say thank you to everyone as usual. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe. Special thank you to my members. Special thank you to those of you who've sent me Ko-fis or stickers, paid me, etc. A special thank you to those of you who keep in touch, send me emails, suggest cases, etc. Any way you positively contribute to my channel, thank you so much. I appreciate every contribution. So hi, lovely lurkers. Gosh, I feel quite tired. I overslept today. Do you know when you sleep more, you seem to be more tired in the morning? Have you noticed that? I did sleep, sort of oversleep, if you like, this morning. I got up late for me. got up at 7:30. I'm normally up at 6. Actually, quite. I don't. I feel more like I've not had much sleep, so don't know what that's about. I need to get my coffee down me. So yeah, hi, lovely lurkers. Hi, replay crew. Thank you for watching. And in the chat, we've got Lily. Hi, Lily. Good morning. Hi, Julie. Good morning. You two or a late bird. I'm an early bird, except for today. I didn't get up early. I like to get up at 6, come round before I start the stream. So I'm a little bit groggy today. A little bit groggy. Oh, well, we've had nothing but rain, storms, thunder, lightning. Yesterday, well, it started in the early hours of the morning. It started the most amazing thunderstorm. Really, the thunder sounded like bombs going yesterday. Now, at this moment in time, it is not raining, but I think we may even have a little bit more rain today. God, you won't think you're living in Spain. I didn't come to Spain to live in Spain for all this bad weather that we've had this winter, but it has. It's been terrible weather, bad. Been very odd this winter. But anyway, it's got to finish sooner or later. I keep saying that. And then it doesn't. But yeah, terrible weather we've had here in Spain. But hopefully today will be a nice blue sky. So, where am I going first? So, I'm going to talk about Gus first. Now, little Gus. Oh, again, one of these cases that we're looking at the moment, like the Nancy Guthrie case, Gus, Lily and Jack Sullivan, the cases that are ongoing that we've been looking at periodically from time to time. Because sometimes we look at older cases. Yesterday, I put a video out about Dale Cregan, who was a guy in Manchester in the UK who killed 2 police women. I do other stories as well, but when I'm doing the ongoing stories, like the current crime, these are the cases that are really taking up our attention, aren't they? And with Gus, little Gus, to me, there's parallels with the Nancy Guthrie case for the simple reason, even though they're completely different countries, Gus Lamont, and he's only 4 years old. He went missing, didn't he, in Yunta in Australia, very remote part of Australia, and also his where he lived on a sheep station there that belonged to his family. Very remote, much more remote than where Nancy lived. But the parallels, I think, between Gus Lamont, this adorable little boy, and Nancy they're both, vulnerable for different reasons. So, of course, Nancy is in her 80s. So Nancy is vulnerable for her old age, if you like. She's been taken against her will. But Gus is vulnerable for his young age. He's only 4 years old. So Gus, we knew right from the beginning, he's been missing a long time, since last September last year. And we knew right from the beginning that he could not survive on his own, whatever had happened to him. So initially, it was said that Gus had been being looked after by one of his grandmas. We're not really sure which one, because that story seems to change. These are Gus Lamont's 2 grandmas. Now, one of them, Josie on the left, she was a man, born a man, and transitioned around about 10 years ago to be a woman. And that is her wife, or was, I presume they're still married. The other lady on the other side is Shannon, and that is Gus' other grandma. So Gus had 2 grandmas. When he went, it's not clear look after him when it's not clear. I wonder if that's because the police have now come out and said there were conflicting stories about what happened that day. I wonder if part of the conflicting stories is which grandma was actually looking after him when he disappeared into a puff of smoke. So, yeah, apparently, according to whichever of these grandmas, probably, I think they've probably conflicted that story, and that's why the police have got the other grandma, whichever one it was looking after his little brother. They sadly were split up. Josh was living a couple of hours away, living on this sheep station, remote sheep station in the middle of nowhere. Jessica was supposedly living there with her two mothers. She's got two mothers now, of course, because her dad had transitioned to a woman. So she was supposedly living there with her two mothers, Josie and Shanann. Little Gus, 4 years old. Again, I don't think it's really been made clear where was she. She's been cleared completely, by the way. I just want to say the police have said that Josh and Jessica had nothing to do with Gus's disappearance. The police's attention is on these two grandmas, and they have declared them both suspects now. They've declared their suspects in the disappearance of Gus, who supposedly was playing a mound of sand outside the house in this sprawling sheep station, and whichever grandma it was that was looking after him said, I think they're saying now it was Shanann that was looking after him. Said she saw him 1 minute, he was there playing on this mound of sand, and then 30 minutes later, this still gets to me. You don't leave a toddler for 30 minutes in the house with you. You wouldn't leave them in another room alone for 30 minutes, because toddlers, they get into problems, don't they? They do all sorts of things. You're just asking for trouble if you leave a 4-year-old alone. 30 minutes is a very long time. There's a lot can happen in 30 minutes. Anyway, this is supposedly what happened. Shanann left Gus playing outside for 30 minutes, and when she went back out, he said, but as I said, there's conflicting stories. In the beginning, I'm sure it was said that it was Josie, the transition, so many, and I think that's maybe why the police have become suspicious, because the stories change after that. So anyway, there's been massive searches conducted on this absolutely sprawling sheep station. Just show you Yunta, just to give people an idea of the terrain. So how difficult it has been for the police to search for this boy. Even the searchers got lost on this massive property, and this dust flying up. It's a very unforgiving terrain where he supposedly have gone his own accord. But really, it did look sort of beginning that it was unlikely that this little boy had just wandered off of his own accord. Just want to show. Look, so this is from the Junta website. It's quite an open terrain. I mean, there are bushes and things like that, so but it's not like woodland or, thick woodland, but it's huge, isn't it? And, this sheep station where Gus was living with his two Gmas and his mum and his little brother, this is the terrain that surrounds it. And it's huge, apparently, but it is bordered by fences, gates. So I think quite quickly they decided he could not have been abducted, and the original premise was he would have wandered off. But, they've searched for him everywhere. They've done massive searches. They've been back again and again to search for Gus and didn't find him. They found nothing. They haven't found any of the clothes. They found one footprint, didn't they? Which just seemed to me like it was perhaps planted there. I don't know. So suddenly, a couple of weeks ago, very dramatically, the police announced that this was a major crime in their opinion, that Gus was deceased. They had reason to believe that he was deceased. He had not wandered off. And initially they said they had one suspect, though they didn't say who it was. But what they did say was it wasn't the suspect in Josh, the mum and dad. So the police did say that. Said it was nothing to do with Jessica and Josh. Stated blah, blah, blah. But they said that they had a suspect whose story kept changing, or there was inconsistencies. And they led us to believe it was one. Anyway, now they've got two suspects, so I think we can safely assume that. Then, of course, there was the incident with Mel reporter turned up to the house. She came out with a gun and was threatening the Daily Mail reporter. She later said she was just going to shoot a snake on the porch. Then, in a bombshell, really, Josie was arrested for having, not on unrelated charges, for having an illegal silencer or sound muffler. So obviously when the police have been there searching the house, have found this muffler, silencer, sound. It's illegal anyway in Australia, and it fit one of Josie's guns. So they arrested Josie. She went down to the police station on her own volition. She was arrested, she was charged, and she's out on bail for that offence, but it's not to do with the disappearance of Gus, not, directly. But it did make me go cold, that, because, I want to think that whatever happened to Gus, because the police are openly saying now they believe he's still, that something happened to him, either an accident or deliberate act. And, I'm sort of desperately to hurt Gus, but, the longer it goes on and they're not, telling their secrets, giving up his body, I was starting to think maybe it was deliberate, and this Josie, if she's told, and I'm just starting to think, did Gus upset her? And she just lost control, and why not just say what happened? You know, why did they cover it up if it was an accident? Accidents happen. Accidents happen. I mean, these women, they're in their 70s. This is their grandchild. So the thing is, because they've been deceptive, it makes you think then, and, you know, with her having a silence there, act, is it a deliberate act? Maybe Gus got cheeky, you know, maybe made some comment to her about a transgender identity. Toddlers are little shits. They do say things, you know, do they? They don't have a filter for saying discreet things, and maybe she got angry, you know. So the police believe that Gus is around this Oak Park station somewhere. He's there. They think they're going to find him, and the news, the update, if you like, is they've gone back again. So I think they're going to keep going back there. They keep putting the pressure on. They've probably got a plan of places to search. There's a huge area that they have to search. They can only do it a little bit at a time, can't they? So they've already searched out houses. They looked into part of. I know they've taken off now. You know, I don't know what the exact situation is there as far as be tracking Josie and Shannon's movements around that area, won't they? They'll be checking out everywhere where they. I mean, it is looking like looking for a needle in a haystack, but the police seem to think he is there somewhere. So they're concentrating their searches on where they live. Hi, Marg. Hi, Marg. Hope you're well. Yes, so they're concentrating on this property and the surrounding areas. So they seem confident, at least on the surface, that Gus is around there somewhere. And so none of Gus's clothes have been found. The hat is wearing. He was wearing. I think he was wearing a Minions t-shirt. So nothing's been found. Nothing. Nada. Not a trace of this boy. How can these grandparents? Can't imagine what the conversation is in the house in the evenings. You know, like I don't know. People just amaze, don't they? I mean, it'd be awful for an actor before your grandchild, maybe when you were looking after them. Of course, it would be awful. How could you then hide the body? Lie to the police and lie to Gus's mom, you know, your own daughter. Things that you don't seem even worth, you know, accidents happen and it'd be awful. But I think what they've done since then, lying to the police, etc., if they have, and the police think they have, that's even worse, isn't it? Even worse. You know, that little boy is out there somewhere. What have they done with it? You know, it just beyond belief for me. But anyway, So what's happened is, let me just read you the articles. They're returning. They've returned to the search property again. Now they did say the last time that they went back there, they said they will constantly be going back there. That they will not stop. They will not stop until they find Gus. You know, they've made that quite clear. So let's have a look at the News Australia. Search for missing Gus Lamont resumes. The police are back at Oak Park Station. Let's have a look at this article. I hope they find something, you know, or that these grandmas come clean, you know. It's just awful, isn't it, to think that little boy lying somewhere. And the thing is, of course, it is like a needle in a haystack, literally, because he's just a 4-year-old boy. It's not a grown adult, you know, which is harder, isn't it, to hide a body. But a tiny little boy like that, you just think, God, he could be anywhere. I mean, they've got a task on their hands, haven't they? If those GMOs don't come clean, it's going to be hard work to find. But they're trying to make them crack, aren't they? So police have returned to the remote station where months after his disappearance. Let's have a look at the videos. See if it works. Gosh. It's a virtually impossible job, but of course it's not. Look, sorry, it's whirring. Hopefully it'll come through in a minute. Sorry, it's whirring. Hopefully it'll come on. It doesn't like it. Come on. There you go. You should be able to see it now. I'm going to put it back to the beginning. It's just a short video to show you the terrain. So this video is from a while ago, but I think now they've decided he hasn't wandered off, so they'll be concentrating their searches around the properties on the land. Look at the dust, goodness me. You know, that's what even the search people got lost. Some of the search people got lost because they couldn't. So that's a hell of a place to search, isn't it? This is when they had the dogs out there. Oh, I hope they find him. God bless him. I hope they find him. He deserves to be found. He's a little boy. He deserves to be found. His mum deserves to know what's happened to him. These Gmails are just evil women, I think. So evil. Evil. It's bad enough when children get kidnapped or things happen to them, you know, from strangers. It's your, you know, the people that are supposed to care about you. You know, the grandma, and of course what they're doing to Gus's mum, and I mean they don't like Gus's dad, so they probably don't care about what he's going through. But surely they love their own daughter. The police, they've been everywhere looking for this boy, but now their searches are concentrated on the buildings, on Oak Park Station itself. Now, I presume they've got a plan. As I said, they've probably followed the phone data. They've been on the land, you know, vehicles that they've used. You know, they'll have mapped out. Won't they, the area, and they'll be. They said they'll keep going back, but they're not confident quick that they'll find, and they will keep going back until they do find it. So they're not going to let it go anyway, which I think is very good. But they're not going to let it go. Now, let me just carry on reading the. Shut up. So the search for missing 4-year-old Gus Lamont has again resumed, with police swarming the remote South Australian property where he was last seen on Wednesday morning. So that's sort of now they'll be doing it. Officers returned to Oak Park Station near Yunta, with a police spokesman declaring the team would be searching several locations on the property for evidence in the case. Oh, bless it. And yeah, they are vile people, aren't they, Kelly? I agree. Just awful, horrible people. Selfish. Gus was last seen at his family's property at around 5 p.m. on September the 27th last year, 2025. And his disappearance triggered an enormous search involving dozens of police, rescue teams, volunteers who scoured the countryside. And now the search for Gus is being investigated as a major crime. The police revealed last month they had identified a suspect who was known to the boy but was not one of Gus's parents. And South Australian Police Commissioner Grant Stevens told ABC Radio Adelaide earlier this month that 2 of Gus's relatives were not cooperating with investigators. He said, "We're still working with Gus's mum and dad, and there are other members of the family who are no longer cooperating. We will be going back to the property. I can't say when. I can't say what the reasons will be. That's entirely up to the task force, but the work is ongoing." So they probably just rocked up there. You know, they won't be telling the fact. They'll have search warrants just in place now, won't they? So I think when they decide exactly where to search, it must be from some information that they've got. They're not, you know, the trouble thing is they have to do targeted searches, don't they? So yeah, look at that. Oh. So he said that they've ruled out the possibility of Gus wandering off and getting lost. There has not been one single piece of evidence we've located during the searching exercise. The most extensive search, I think, arguably in the history of South Australia, that has given us any indication that he did wander off. And Gus's parents said his disappearance has been unbearable in an impassioned public plea issued last month. "We are united in our grief, and we are united in our search for answers about what happened to our little boy Gus, who means everything to us. If someone knows what happened, we are pleading with that person." But she's pleading with her own parents there, "or anyone who may have seen or heard anything, to please come forward. Even the smallest detail could give us the answers we desperately need." And we also want to express our deepest gratitude to everyone involved in the search for Gus. So, yeah, I think the rest of it just goes through what I've already said. So, that's where we are. They're back out there. Let's just pray. I've been praying this morning that they just find out something. They find out, they find him. I just hope they find him, or that these horrible women crack. I don't know if they're in custody. They've not been charged with anything, Marg. So I presume they're not in custody. They're not on. Well, Josie is on bail for the firearm charges for having the silencer, but no, because they've not been charged with anything. So I presume they're not on. That they're free to come and go as they want, I presume, but they'll be being watched, of course, I imagine. Anyway, so that's the first thing I wanted to update you on this morning. I have got classes later, so I haven't got much time now, but I want to tell you about Nancy Guthrie. Let me put some windows down. So that I don't get confused about where I'm going. I don't get confused where I'm going. Well, as always, got so many windows open. Put that down. Okay, so we're going to talk about Nancy Guthrie. Now, again, I feel like we're on day 250 of the but of course we're not that far down the line. I don't know what day it is. Is it about 38? Day 38 since Nancy Guthrie went missing. So Nancy, of course, is the 84-year-old lady, this lady up in the corner here, who disappeared again from her home. So these are the similarities with Gus, aren't they? Both vulnerable for different ways. Gus was vulnerable for his young age. Nancy's vulnerable because she's elderly. But the commonalities are they both disappeared from their homes and nobody knows where they are. Now, the difference with Nancy, of course, we do have, gosh, didn't you think, I certainly did, when these pictures first came out of, the perpetrator house in those early hours of the morning when she went missing, messing about with a doorbell camera, etc. Didn't you think that this was going to be solved quickly or quickly-ish? Certainly didn't think we'd be another 30 days down the line or whatever. And still, really, no further on. We don't really know anymore, do we? Do you think we know any more than we did 20 days ago or when these pictures came out? I don't feel like I know anymore. I feel there's been a lot more speculations. There's been loads of speculation, but I don't feel that we know any more now than we did when these images came out, do we? And then there's the ransom notes that have never been declared genuine or not genuine. As far as we know, they've not been traced back to the people who sent them. No vehicle that we've had identified that the police are looking for. There's been 2 detainments of 2, I suppose, suspects, but they were released. Carlos was released. No charges. Luke Daly, his mum, questioned, detained, house searched. Nothing came of it. Lately, I noticed yesterday there was a lot of talk about Nancy's hearing aids, that she might have hearing aids that you can trace, because I think her hearing aid was left behind, but she may have had a spare one, and then a lot, it was Nancy Grace was talking about it and people were talking about it, but I think if they could have trained a hearing aid, they would have done it by now, personally. So I don't think there's anything in that at all. Of course, she had a pacemaker, so it's thought that the pacemaker might be able to find, but it's there is technology that can look for pacemakers, but it's quite complicated. Apparently they can detect a pacemaker signal, but they have to, be really close to it to detect it. So it's difficult. So anyway, it hasn't been detected as far as we know. Anyway, there's rumours she might have been taken over the border to Mexico, because of course Mexico's very close by. There's rumours against her son-in-law, Tommaso. Even yesterday on the social media, people were saying that he'd confess. There's some AI videos going around, like showing false information. You just can't believe it until we get official confirmation of anything, really. You can't believe what podcasters are saying, in my own personal opinion. Because even if they're not the ones making up the information, sometimes I think they show information that's false without checking out that it's actually genuine. So it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Hey, true crime. Yeah, what is going on with the Nancy Guthrie case? Of course, it was all complicated initially from the sheriff. I think a lot comes down to him. I do think he dealt with things badly. Now, again, rumours, only rumours, that the podcaster was saying that his brother died the next day in a nursing home. I don't know if that's true. Maybe he hasn't been completely with it, because of that, if that is true. But definitely, I think what's true about Sheriff Nanos, he is very ego-driven. And he doesn't like the FBI because the FBI investigated him for embezzlement of funds, for misappropriation of money from his sheriff's department the last time he was sheriff, a few years ago. And so he has been out on public record, slagging off the FBI, basically. So I do think that he dealt with it badly. So now what seems to be happening, it's like people have got the daggers in for Sheriff Nanos. Now, why would that be? How many crime cases that we've covered and the sheriff's involved, we don't normally get this total disrespect for the sheriff, even from legitimate mainstream media. They're very down on Sheriff Nanos. Nobody is supporting him. That's the thing. It's all right for me as a YouTuber to come out and say, I think Sheriff Nanos is a clown. And I do. But nobody comes back and says, oh, no, he isn't. Why are you saying that? Nobody does. Everybody agrees. There's got to be somebody out there who thinks Sheriff Nanos is good at his job. But if there is, they're not coming out and supporting him, that's for sure. So let's have a look. So apparently as well, he's been sued by somebody else from an unrelated case. Supposedly somebody's launched a $1 million lawsuit against him for another case. And now people are starting to look back into his past and his credentials, right through his career. Now he's 72, I think. So, he's had a long career. So maybe it's unfair to look back at mistakes he might have made when he was young. We've all made mistakes when we're young. I think if anybody, really looked into your past, whoever you were, they would come up with, it's unusual to come up shining that you've never done anything that perhaps you shouldn't have done, or I'm not talking about murder and things like that. I'm talking about just maybe, I don't know, maybe you've been stopped for speeding, or maybe you've got a DUI, or maybe, it's unusual for people to get 72 and not got anything untoward toward in their life. But of course, he is a police officer, so he shouldn't. You are supposed to live by a different set of rules, really, aren't you? If you go into law enforcement, you're supposed to keep your nose clean, aren't you? But anyway, let's have a look what people are saying. Don't know if you've heard about any of this. Where we go? Let's make sure it's sharing. So, lead investigator in Nancy Guthrie case, Sheriff Chris Nanos forced to explain his fudged resume and leaving his first policing job in disgrace. Now, the thing is, you can't, if you're going into law enforcement, you can't be, faking your curriculum. I mean, I think all of us, I expect, if you've ever applied for a job, you tailor your curriculum, don't you? It's like whatever job you're applying for, if they say, I don't know, they want someone with experience in customer service. Now, maybe, I mean, you can't lie and say you've got experience with customer service when you haven't, but you might big it up a little bit. Maybe you've got very limited customer service experience, but, maybe at least you've got some. So yeah, you sort of tailor make your curriculum a little bit, don't you? You might say, oh yeah, without lying. Do you know what I mean? You can make things sound better without actually lying, because it's just to get you there to the interview, isn't it? And then if you get to the interview and they start questioning you, you should never lie then, because things can, and that's not lying, like, what's the word, exaggerating something a little bit. So maybe you've got 3 months customer service. So you're not going to say 3 months because it doesn't seem that much. So you're going to say, yes, months of customer service experience. That's not a lie. That's just making it sound better. I mean, that's marketing, really, isn't it? That's what marketing is. Just maybe making things sound better than they actually are. So people think, oh, they've got months of customer service experience. But, months could be 2 months, could be 12 months, so that's not lying on your resume or on your CV, is it? But lying on your CV, of course, is a bad thing to do. But, bigging things up a little bit, everybody does, I think, anyway. So this was him at the press conference. This, of course, is Nancy and Savannah. That is probably quite. So the Arizona sheriff leading the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance resigned from his very first policing job to avoid being fired over embarrassing blunders. Now, why are we not surprised at that? Oh my God. Do you think that's fancy Sheriff Nanos making a blunder? Gosh, can't imagine that, can you? And he posted a resume online that fudged the dates of his employment. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, stepped down from the El Paso Police Department in 1982. Now, let's bear in mind, we are going back 40 years. After racking up a laundry list of infractions, ranging from excessive force, I mean, that's serious, isn't it? To off-duty gambling, to improperly using his siren, and simple tardiness, the Arizona Republic reported. Now, it doesn't surprise me about Sheriff Nanos. I think he would use his position. He's all ego. He's got that little man syndrome. He likes to be Mr. Important King Dick in his office. He is. That's how he's come over to me from the beginning. So it doesn't surprise me. Some people do go, there's so many good law enforcement officers out there who, they try really hard to do their job well and properly. I am not a police, what's the word? I don't put police law enforcement down, but there are some people, unfortunately, are not quite so. Some people go into the police because of the power it gives them. They love it, and that you're always going to get that, unfortunately, and you just have to try and weed out these people. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me about him for some reason. If that's true, of course, this is what is being said, but is it true? Personally, I think probably it is, because it just confirms what we already thought. But anyway, so these missteps, including an allegation that he kicked a suspect in the head so badly they were hospitalised, landed Nanos with 37 days of unpaid leave in the early 80s and resulted in him finally being told to either step down or get canned, according to the outlet. It just does confirm, doesn't it, what other people have said about him? So this is not a random thing out of nowhere. Other people have come on. Remember the union rep and other people that have worked with him, and this is how they've described him. Where's the people supporting him? Saying, "Oh no, he's brilliant." You don't see that at all. So he took the resignation option, but he messed up the dates in his publicly posted resume, which stated that he remained with the El Paso department until 1984, 2 years longer than he was there. That is a lie, isn't it? The sheriff's office acknowledged the inaccuracy, calling it another mistake, clerical errors that had been corrected, but Nanos himself bristled and brushed it off when pressed. And he said because they made a request for information about it, and this is his response: "That's your urgent request? You sure you don't want to go back to my high school and ask why I got swats from the principal? Yeah, I'd like to know why you got swats from the principal. Good luck with your hit piece," he told the Republic. So, this has really peed him off, hasn't it? And that's his. Now, you understand he'd be peed off, but this is the way he deals with things, Sheriff Nanos. This is why he's rubbish, because he's in a position where he could have dealt with that better. He could have either not said anything, though I don't think that would have been a good idea. But to come back and say that, I mean, you should have just said, "I'll cooperate with anything you want to know." If you've got nothing to hide, you cooperate with anything. So the resume discrepancy and eyebrow-raising nature of Nanos' departure from the El Paso police comes as the sheriff has been criticised over his department's search for Nancy. This man has been out of his depth from day one with this case. He just hasn't had any concept of the massiveness of the case. And the thing is, he could have easily just handed it over to the FBI and admitted he was out of his depth. So, yeah, the 84-year-old mother of the Today Show host, Savannah Guthrie, vanished from her Tucson home on February the 1st. And this has now entered its fifth week with no leads and lots of errors. He's been accused of making confusing and contradictory statements about the case, leaving the scene of Nancy's kidnapping so unsecured that reporters, even pizza delivery men, were able to walk up to the front door. Oh yeah, it has been a total shit show, really, pardon my French. So the lack of suspects in the 5 weeks since Nancy was snatched has also led to criticism. Several persons of interest were questioned, but all were cleared, including a delivery driver who had never even heard of the 84-year-old, and investigators have not identified any real suspects. So then it goes on to say, but Nanos' career hasn't been all a blunder. He led the investigation into the 2011 shooting of, is that Republican, I presume, Gabby Giffords, an attack that left 6 dead and 13 injured, and he's been sheriff of Pima County since 2021 after winning 2 consecutive elections. or didn't realise they were consecutive. He also climbed the department ranks to the top spot after joining as a corrections officer in 1984, following his departure from El Paso. Even in El Paso, his first job in law enforcement, after joining in 1976, he did receive accolades such as Officer of the Year for dangerous work as a decoy to bait drug dealers and violent criminals who routinely mugged him. Okay, so we've got to give him some credit for that. The Pima County Sheriff's Office backed his leadership in a statement after the resume errors were revealed. Sheriff Nanos has dedicated more than 4 decades to law enforcement and public service. Throughout his career, he has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to professionalism, accountability, and the safety of the communities he serves. I mean, the Pima County, that's his statement, is it? There's the Pima County Sheriff's Office backed his leadership. But yeah, he's probably written that. But, anyway. He has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to professionalism, accountability, and the safety of the communities he serves, the statement said. As Sheriff of Pima County, he continues to lead the department with experience, integrity, and a clear focus on protecting the residents of Pima County. I don't think the residents of Pima County feel very protected at the moment, but hey, who am I to? So there we go. We've got the positives and the negatives there. Right, I'm just going to read something else. So I just want to go on to the Twitter account of Brianna. Brianna Whitney, we watched the interview she did with Luke Daly, and she's been talking about this because she works for the Arizona Republic, doesn't she? So 17 hours ago, the Arizona Republic asked Sheriff Nanos to respond to their findings that his work history was misrepresented on his resume, and they were sent this. And this is this comment that he made. See, this is what he does, right? He's reactionary, isn't he, Nanos? His knee-jerk reaction. So instead of sitting and thinking about this response and knowing that it was going to be broadcast to everybody, he's just put out a knee-jerk reaction. That's your urgent request? You sure you don't want to go back to my high school and ask why I got swats from the principal? Good luck with your hit piece. It's a totally inappropriate response. He could have done a much better response if he would have thought about it a little bit, but he can't bear criticism, can he? He's a very strange little man, I think. Strange guy. Anyway, so of course it was that interview where he had all those clothes on. So what's this? So PCSD has now issued this statement regarding Sheriff Nanos's resume, but they did not address his personal comments back to the paper. The Pima County Sheriff's Department recently identified 2 clerical errors in Sheriff Chris Nanos's publicly posted resume. Both date discrepancies were administrative in nature and were not intended to mislead or misrepresent Sheriff Nanos's work history. Well, I don't know about that. But for clarity, Sheriff Nanos served with the El Paso Police Department from 1976 to 1982. His service with El Paso concluded in 1982, not 1984 as previously stated. Additionally, he was promoted to the rank of captain in 2007, not 2009. These administrative errors have been corrected and the updated resume can be found here. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Sheriff, and then it goes on what I read out earlier. Let's see if it's easy to go to the resume. We'll look at that another time. I mean, you know, when you do CVs, sometimes it's hard to remember dates, isn't it? When you have to go back, you know, when if you're doing a CV and you're going back to jobs you've had, sometimes it's hard to remember the exact dates, isn't it? It's from years ago. You think, oh, when did I finish that job? Was it 1980 or was it 1981? I mean, you know, mistakes can happen, so we're given the benefit of the doubt of that. But I just want to see, before I finish now, if I can find because he's been hit with a lawsuit unrelated to this case. $1 million lawsuit. So he's got a lot of woes at the moment, hasn't he? And he might surprise us all and come up with actually arrest someone and come up with a result in this case. And then everybody, I suppose, will be saying how great he is. I don't know, but oh, it's not doing it. Hang on. It's not playing. The computer's not playing. Yeah. So, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos named in $1 million lawsuit. According to one, another media thing is saying $1.35 million lawsuit filed. I've got two places saying $1.35 million lawsuit from an inmate, and others saying $1 million. Which one will we go with that you think is? Oh, I'm going to go with Yahoo. So yeah, that Yahoo is saying Newsnight. You can see it. So yeah, he's not having a good time, is he, Sheriff Nanos? And if he would have just passed it all over to the FBI, maybe he would have avoided all this. Because it's the scrutiny that he's getting. You know, he won't feel comfortable with it. Thing is, he doesn't stand up. He's getting the scrutiny, of course. It's because this case isn't solved. If the case was solved, he wouldn't get the scrutiny, would he? So it's his own fault, really, to be honest, because he's tried to take control of the case, but it's all gone wrong. I bet he wishes he would have just left it to the FBI now. So yeah, he's reportedly been filed against Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos by an Arizona inmate seeking $1.35 million. Reportedly, the inmate, Christopher Michael Marks, alleges his life was endangered, and the lawsuit was filed Thursday in the U.S. District Court for the District of Arizona. So he's an inmate at the Pima County Jail. He alleges Nanos and the department violated Article 2 of the Arizona State Constitution, otherwise known as the Declaration of Rights. He alleges his life was put in jeopardy after a sheriff's deputy did not disinfect himself. Sorry, I mean, this is going to be somewhat ridiculous, isn't it? So a sheriff's deputy did not disinfect himself, nor was Sheriff Nanos working to ensure COVID-19 was being contained. Oh, it's about COVID, even though another unit was in quarantine after an inmate contracted COVID-19. I could have died. I don't know if I feel much sympathy for this guy. Well, he shouldn't have been in prison in the first place, should you really? Marks reportedly wrote in the lawsuit, referring to possibly contracting the virus. Marks is seeking the compensation to buy apartments for the unhoused, he says. He desires an apology from Nanos, as well as asking the department to make they properly disinfect their bodies when the deputies are working 2 units at a time and one of these units is quarantined. Nanos has gained nationwide record. Nancy Guthrie. Authorities do not have any knowledge of Guthrie's whereabouts as the search heads towards day 39. We're probably already in day 39, maybe even day 40. But this inmate, you talk about kicking someone when you're down. This inmate has decided to do this lawsuit of winning it because Nanos is, is not exactly known as a brilliant sheriff, is he, at the moment? So maybe that's what will settle with him. I mean, the thing is, whether you've got sympathy for the inmate or not, and I think personally, I think, well, you're in prison and you must have done something wrong to go to give care to their prisoners. Why has he waited all this time? I mean, COVID is 5 years ago now, isn't it? So why has he waited all this time? He's definitely kicking a man while he's down. So we'll see what happens. Maybe the department will, he's making a settlement because it probably is wrong what they've done. But anyway, you'd have to go to a court case and all this kind of thing. But just thought I'd let you know about that. So apart from being thought of as not very good at his job, he's been sued for 1.3 million. I bet he must dread getting up in the morning. He must be thinking, bloody hell, what else is going to happen? They're sort of scrutinising his CV, his resume, everything he's ever said and done, everything he's ever done wrong. Don't really have. She seems strange because I think what I've seen from other crime cases we've covered, the sheriffs, the other people, the deputies, like, they support them, don't they, in what they do. I haven't seen this support for now, so maybe I've just missed it. I don't know. So yeah, so the update. Home's looking for that little boy. I hope they find him. I hope something breaks in that case. And then we've got this other case, Nancy Guthrie, probably on day 40 by now. I don't know, I've lost track of the days, but at least day 39, 40. And nobody has been held accountable, despite having the CCTV pictures. And then, of course, we had the 2 detainments, but they came to nothing. So, yeah, will this case ever get sorted? I mean, it will. I really do think it definitely will get solved. But just feel for the family, don't you, of waiting, and of course for Nancy, because if she is still alive, which again, just look, every day that goes past is another day that you think she can't be alive. But if she is, she's going through hell as well. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. I've got to go now, get some breakfast, got some classes today. Busy day today, but I will see you soon in the next video. And until then, as always, may God go with you. Please like, please subscribe.